I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Tuesday, February the 26th, where we had kind of a weary Monday there. Weary from the weather, mainly another big storm come across the Midwest there over the weekend, and weary from the market. Well advertised, at least by me, the failure in the negotiated fat cattle trade. Don't forget our uncle movement. The Unified Negotiated Cattlemen's Leverage effort there. We've got to get together and try to do something, guys. This deal is totally slipping away. But let's get on with your board for Monday. February live cattle futures down 12 cents at 128.55. April was up 35 cents at 129.22, but really not much happened in your live cattle contracts early in the week there. March feeder cattle down 40 cents at 142.50. April up 35 cents at 145.65. Again, your weighted average on last week's meager fat cattle trade, 44,900 head. You compare that to the previous week's meager movement of 79,300 head, and a year ago's pretty normal movement for the same time a year ago this past week of 92,500 head, which followed a giant movement a year ago of 127,800 head. So you kind of see where we're going here. We're not getting near enough done. But you figure that on a typical week, as far as steers and heifers, your packers slaughter about 500,000 cattle, typically right around there. And they have on a typical week about 80% of their needs covered. So they need to buy around 100,000 head of cattle negotiated each week to cover their bases, you would think. But they haven't been doing that, not so far this year, and not in the past several weeks at all. But continue to keep going right along and pretend that they don't really need the cattle and not tipping their hand. But I will promise you guys, they need to buy some cattle. Especially when you get the regionals in the mix, they need to buy some cattle every week to kind of keep things going along. So don't think they've got your goat yet. I don't know how much stock you put into show lists, but as you would imagine, show lists come out reportedly a lot heavier this week, especially in Nebraska, where they quoted 22,000 head heavier show lists this week than last week, and you would think that whenever they're not selling very many cattle. But let's talk about that kind of half-ass trade we had last week. You could maybe call it $1 to $1.50 higher on a live basis, but didn't really trade enough cattle to establish the market on a live basis. Dress trade could be called $2 higher, but it was even less there. But your weighted average on live steers in your 5-area feeding region was only 16,600 head. Most of the time we would not even consider that an established market. But your weighted average on live steers was 126.36, even though you couldn't get that on the whole total movement. But that was $1.40 higher than the weighted average from the previous week. Your dress steer weighted average on only 6,700 head in your 5-area feeding region was just under 202 at 201.97. That was up $2.05 from the weighted average on a dress basis for steers the previous week. Your regionals did most all the business. Your big four did not want to play. They just want to keep their foot on this market and keep things down. They're not feeding any cattle. What do they care? They just want to keep it the same all the time. Meanwhile, your cattle feeders continue to struggle with the poor performance, bitter cold temperatures, been dealing with the mud here for months and months now. And like I said on your weekend visit, most of these cattle in the areas, Kansas North, they're having closeouts with cost of gains around 90 cents, where they had plugged those cattle in when they went in from 65 to 70. Now down in the Texas Panhandle, dry as a bone, always is, they're continuing to feed cattle kind of worth the money or back where they expected to do it anyway. But sure do need the regionals out there. Did we even have enough volume to quote a price or to give a base price for the formulas? Well, it depends on what kind of contract you have, what your agreement is, but it might be a little bit spotty, and I'm thinking that we may be getting to the point where these people that are in a formula deal, in some kind of a contracting deal to sell cattle each week, or guys that just turn their numbers in every Thursday, might be getting kind of tired of this, because they are expecting that their base price should go up with the market, and when we're not establishing a market and we cannot get a fair deal on the market, then they're also getting screwed, just like the negotiated cash guys. But don't want to pound too much on the packers, or you guys might start to think that I don't believe that they're playing fair. But nationwide, on a negotiated basis, only 52,000 head in the entire United States. 52,000 head of cattle sold on a haggled, negotiated, open price there, and that's just unbelievable. Only 5,800 of those, a little more than that, sold for 15 to 30 day delivery, so that was about 11% of the total nationwide volume that sold for a 2 to 4 week delivery there. But like I've been saying, your forward contracting continues to grow. That hasn't been a big deal over the past several years, but it's continuing to become more popular for your packers to secure their needs for the near-term future there. But let's look at your feeder cattle markets. Real-time index on Cattle Market Central late Monday was sitting at 140.62, down about 37 cents, just kind of steady week from the end of last week there, even through Saturday's trades. But look at your big volume Monday sales. Oklahoma National Stockyards in Oklahoma City, 8,000 head there. Feeders steady to $3 higher. Guys continuing to be aggressive buying these feeder cattle, and I tell you what, they've got a lot of hope and a pretty optimistic attitude. Steer calves steady to only $1 higher, where they've been more than that higher, and we've been talking about how aggressive your guys have been all winter long, and getting more so as we're getting closer to calendar spring, although the weather and the storms does not really agree with that. But steady to only $1 higher on steer calves, but not well tested on the pee-wee calves, those 4-weight cattle and the light fives that the guys are really wanting. Heifer calves had a little better test of those, $4 to $6 higher. Joplin Regional Stockyard, 6,900 head there. Feeders steady to $2 lower, and most of the loss was on the feeder heifers. Your feeder steers were mostly steady there. Calves, middleweight calves, steady to $3 higher, and didn't have their normal slug of pee-wee calves there at Joplin on Monday. A couple of individual quotes come out of Joplin on Monday. Had the biggest string on Monday, which was 121 head of 886-pound feeder steers, bring 137.50. Pretty good quote on commodity cattle weighing that close to 900 pounds. And then on some calves, and quoting some heifer calves out of Joplin, 82 head string of 494-pound heifer calves bring 167. That's pretty good. Hadn't been that long ago, but that would have been a pretty good quote for steers. But probably the highest quote I saw on Monday come out of my friends, the Browning Brothers in Palmyra, Missouri, at F&T Livestock, a good DV auction customer there and has been for a long time. Had a load of steers weighed 656 at $164. And that's your feeder flash for Tuesday.